People ask me all the time, hey Justin, what's the best boat? I wish it was that simple, but in reality, it's just not.
There's no perfect boat. And so they're all compromises in one way or another.
Hull designs like this V-hull right here, it has a really hard reverse chine. No matter where you're at on this boat, you're always within an arm's reach of a rod holder somewhere.
Digital motor monitoring system keeps track of your fuel. Huge.
Travis likes to go a little overboard with everything, in my opinion, but you know, he wants 2 motors on the back.
2 motors equals redundancy, redundancy equals safety.
The more things a boat does, the less it does well. Buying or building a new boat is supposed to be fun, so make it fun. The process, to me, is one of the biggest parts of owning a boat, because every boat I own is a little different than the last. If you wanted to learn all about the different types of boats that we use around here, this is something you're not going to want to miss. Yeah, look at that!
Chasin the Sun is brought to you by Holiday Inn Resort, Panama City Beach. Humminbird, simply, clearly better. Dulce Vida Tequila. Grundy's, we are fishing. And by Pirates Cove Marina, you enjoy the Gulf, we'll take care of the rest.
You know, people ask me all the time, hey Justin, what's the best boat? I wish it was that simple, but in reality, it's just not. That is a really complicated question because we have a ton of options, which is great, but it can be kind of hard to narrow down those options and figure out exactly what you need. And that's why we decided to do an entire episode just talking about boats. We're gonna talk about what do we want out of a boat that is gonna make that the right boat for you. If you wanted to learn all about the different types of boats that we use around here, this is something you're not gonna wanna miss. So you're thinking about buying a boat. Well, with so many options out there, it can be really difficult to find what boat is gonna fit your lifestyle and your needs. I've been buying, selling, modifying, and building boats basically my entire life. So let me try to use that information to help you find what boat is gonna be best for you. If you already own a boat, you're already looking for your next boat because there's no perfect boat. So now that you're gonna look at a new boat, you're gonna have to be real honest with yourself and decide what you're really gonna use that boat for. That's the most important part of buying your next boat, is trying to improve on what your last one didn't do that you wanted it to do. So ask yourself, what's my main use for this new boat? And once you decide that, you need to narrow it down and pick what category of boats you're looking at.
What do you want to use this boat for? Fishing or pleasure boating? What percentage of that equation is higher? If you plan to mostly go fishing, you should be getting a boat that's primarily designed for that activity, which means less comfort, cushions and cup holders, and more durability, electronics and rod holders. If you lean toward more pleasure cruising than fishing, lean toward more comfort and cup holders.
If your main goal is to take your family out to Shell Island for a day on the water, well then don't be looking at a flats boat. Because yeah, the flats boat does a really good job of fishing shallow, but it's not gonna take a family of 5 out to Shell Island very comfortably.
If you are in the boat market looking for a boat, some of the things you need to ask yourself is, how do I want to use the boat? Am I going to be using the boat to go to Shell Island? Am I going to be using the boat to go fishing? You can also ask yourself, are we looking for an overnight type boat? You know, there's many different boats that are available out there, so it's always good to have a general idea as to how you and your family want to use that boat.
Decide what your main use is for that boat. Well, as simple as that sounds, everybody has the same answer. I have a lot of uses for this boat, and that's where the complication comes in.
Most people's use for boats changes over time. So we have a lot of boats that you know, cross into different areas, meaning that, you know, if you're going to recreate at Shell Island and then you're also going to fish, we have many different boats that cross into both of those spaces, if you will.
I mean, if you want a pontoon boat to take the family out of the island, or a flats boat to fish on, or a bay boat that's going to be somewhere in between, or a big center console to run offshore with, you know, those boats have a primary purpose. No boat does everything well. As a matter of fact, the more things a boat does, the less it does well. Before I purchase a boat, I make sure I have a game plan of where I'm gonna store that boat and how I'm gonna maintain it. And I really think that's important for everyone to do. If you buy a boat, you need to have a way to keep it under shelter. That's plan A, okay? I mean, that's the first most important part of that new boat purchase. You have somewhere safe to store it and somewhere easy to access, because you want to be able to use this boat. If you make it too difficult to use the boat, you're going to find you don't use it that much, and then a couple years later, you're trying to figure out how to sell that boat. So once you get the right boat for you, let's make sure you have somewhere good to store that boat. The next thing you want to think about is how you're going to maintain it, because boat maintenance is key. And one of the easiest things to do to maintain your boat is to use it. And let's face it, that's the best part, that's the fun part, right? So don't let the boat buying experience seem overwhelming. It is complicated. You know, I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, it's complicated. But it should be a fun adventure that you're going through. You wanna work with somebody, if you don't know boats really well, especially if this is your first boat, dealerships are a great place to start, because you're gonna find somebody there that can advise you on a lot of these things, but you do wanna do your own homework. And again, this homework should be fun. We can break hull designs down into three main categories. You have V-hulls, you have a flat bottom hull, and then you have a catamaran style hull.
Also known as mono-hull, multi-hull, then we got sail, power, all that other stuff. But
and you actually get out there in the water, then you're really gonna see how that boat's gonna perform. There's two main things that define a boat. One is the layout, and the other would be the hull design. We can break hull designs down into three main categories. You have V-hulls, you have a flat bottom hull, and then you have a catamaran style hull. And basically every boat that's out there is some type of combination of one of those three hulls.
also known as mono-hull, multi-hull.
Let's start with the V-hull because, hey, around here, that's the most common hull design you're gonna find. Basically, a V-hull is named after the letter V, and it does exactly what you would think. It kind of parts its way through the water. You know, some of the advantages of a V-hull is it allows a boat to ride smoother through the water than a flat bottom hull does. And it's gonna, have some disadvantages, like the more V you put in it, the tippier the boat's gonna get, the less stable. There's a good reason that V-hulls are the most common hull designs that we see around here. The main reason is because they ride really good. They're gonna actually push the water away from the hull and then out the sides, which not only is gonna make it ride smoother, but it's gonna make it ride drier. Well, that's given if you have a V-hull with a reverse chine. We have a typical V-hull right here, and then if you notice the edge of the hull right here, this is what we call the chine. If the V just continued out, it would actually let the water ride up the hull, and sometimes it can get you wet. But good hull designs like this V-hull right here, it has a really hard reverse chine, which is gonna let the water ride up the hull, and then this is actually gonna push it out away from the hull. Another really common hull design you're gonna see around here, especially in the saltwater world, is a flat bottom hull. A flat bottom hull provides, really to me, three main advantages. A flat bottom hull is gonna be more stable, it's gonna float in shallower water, and then it also requires less power to plane that boat. So, we use flat bottom boats on these shallow grass flats pulling around, and the reason we're using that flat bottom boat is because it's gonna float shallow and it's pretty stable. But that's not the only application for it. If you're out here on Panama City Beach, you're certainly gonna see dolphins and dolphin tour boats. You'll notice that most of them use a flat bottom boat. The main reason is, it's not because they're trying to float shallow, they're looking for those other two advantages. They want a boat that's gonna be really stable so that when they have a lot of people looking over the side of the boat at these dolphins, it'll be stable. And then they also wanna be able to operate that boat with less horsepower. Another really good hull design that we see around here, it's not quite as common, but it might be more common than you think, would be a catamaran style hull. Now, here lately, catamaran hulls have really made a big comeback in the fishing industry because we've gotten more horsepower to push these big catamaran hulls offshore. And so you see some of that making a comeback, but another catamaran hull that's super common around here that most people don't think about is a pontoon boat. And a pontoon boat is just that. It's a catamaran style hull. So the main advantages that I like about a catamaran style hull, one would be the stability. I mean, that's the most important part of a pontoon boat is a big open platform. It's really stable. And then the second part of a catamaran style hull is it still has the opportunity to give you a really good ride. And that's why we see a lot of these big offshore catamarans going back to that style hull, is because we've figured out how to take that stability of a catamaran hull and then add back in the really good ride. If you're at a dealership and you have somebody working with you on a boat, these are things that they can advise you on. I could literally look at these hull designs in here and tell you a lot about how it's going to ride without getting the boat in the water. But I will say, once you settle in on some specific boats that you are actually looking to buy, you want to sea trial that boat. I can't push that hard enough, is get that boat in the water, get the regular load you're going to have on it. If you're regularly going to take 4 or 5 people out, get a load on that boat, how you're really going to use it, and go on a sea trial, because all these theories that we have about hull designs and stuff, they're pretty accurate. But once you get on the boat and you actually get out there in the water, then you're really going to see how that boat's going to perform.
Boats are just a shape with about 30 different components and control systems bolted in to make it a single usable recreational vehicle.
I got my 25 Dorado here, which is a semi-custom boat. No matter where you're at on this boat, you're always within an arm's reach of a rod holder somewhere. If y'all have seen very many of these shows, y'all know I'm all about details. And when it comes to a bay boat, for example, really the boat is just a starting point. How you modify this boat and how you lay it out, those little details are going to define what that boat really does. And when I'm laying out my boat or I'm modifying it, I'm going to go through so many different changes in that boat that are going to make it work for me. And it might not be what someone else would do, but it's going to make that boat work better in the environment that I'm using it in.
Boats are really just a shape, and then you bolt everything else onto them. So there's like 30 different components that make it to where you, the finished product, are using it recreationally on the water. You know, you take several different systems. You've got trolling motor system, steering system, your motors, you've got your lighting, your stereo, you put them all together, and it's awesome. And then you start putting more on, and it gets more expensive, and then you got more to break. So you gotta know what you want.
I got my 25 Dorado here, which is a semi-custom boat. And what I mean by a semi-custom is this hull is actually pulled out of a mold. So that's the only part of this build process with a semi-custom boat that is predetermined, is that hull shape. But once you take that, then I get to lay out and design and execute all these accessories however I want. Now, when I laid out this boat, I wanted a super open layout. I wanted to be able to run around from one end to the other, front to back, without having to step up on stuff, step over things, and that's what I got. So that's why I chose this flat deck design where it's wide open. Now, it doesn't stop there. So I took this console, and again, they have different console options, but this one fit me the best. Live well in the front, I got another live well back there. But then I actually took the console and moved it forward in the boat. You might ask, well, why would you want to do that, Justin? Well, we fish out the back of the boat a lot, so I wanted more room back there. So by moving the console forward a foot, it gave me a larger cockpit area in the back when we're refishing. You know, it gives more people more room back there. Like anything, there's always, you got to do something to offset something that you do on a boat. So I moved the console forward, so I moved weight forward. And honestly, the center console on this size boat is a big deal because this houses a lot of the weight that's inside this boat. So by moving it forward, I needed to do something to offset that weight. So what I did was I took all my batteries and I moved them back here into the leaning post instead of the console. So I shifted that weight back, have them all here, easy access. And then on my leaning post here, I still have tackle storage up here.
Most importantly for me, in a boat, I want a rod holder everywhere that I'm standing. I can put a rod somewhere, so it has a home. And I don't have to move because that means that I've got to move you if you're in front or between me and the rod holder.
I do like rod holders all around the gunnel, all around the boat. No matter where you're at on this boat, you're always within an arm's reach of a rod holder somewhere.
Justin doesn't like the back of the boat with clutter. I like the back of the boat to have at least 6 rod holders so I can get them to where they're out of the salt spray and don't ever get wet. Because the drier your rods stay with the least amount of salt water, the longer they last. That is huge.
The most important part of the process is getting your helm station laid out correctly. Once you choose all these options, okay, you're gonna get to lay this out however you want. I like a really big multi-function display right here. I can see my charts, traditional sonar, side imaging, all on one screen. That's why I want it big.
You got your digital gauge, must have. Stereo control. A lot of systems will link it into your GPS. What happens if you don't want to burn your GPS while you're sitting at the sandbar? I always like to have a separate stereo control with a remote in a couple spots on the boat so I can run it if we're in the water or if I'm up in the tower. You know, it gives me the ability to have some flexibility.
So even though me and Travis do a lot of very similar styles of fishing, I mean, let's face it, you know me and him are just different people. So we end up with a surprisingly similar boat, but again, they're gonna have their little differences. I mean, Travis's, you look at the colors, it looks like Travis, okay? You go to the batteries inside the console of Travis's boat, he's got more batteries than I do because he's got more speakers than I do. I put my radio controls kind of off to the side because to me, do I enjoy tunes while I'm riding? Sure, but it's not my priority on a boat. Now Travis, on the other hand, I think he's got as many volume control dials all over his boat as he does fishing rods. It just makes perfect sense. I like to keep mine just a little simpler. Travis likes to go a little overboard with everything in my opinion, but you know, he wants 2 motors on the back.
2 motors equals redundancy, redundancy equals safety. I gotta get back home. 1 motor, you may not.
I like to keep it, have all the accessories, but keep it simple as well. So laying out your boat and putting all these custom features on there, that's a fun part of the process. But another thing you have to think about is not only the maintenance of the boat itself, talking about keeping it clean, you know, changing the oil in the motor, all those types of things, but also the maintenance of all these accessories. Because like anything, the more things you put on there, at some point they're gonna break and you're gonna have to fix them as well. So how you're gonna use this boat and how you're gonna maintain it, that's gotta be a part of the planning process really before you even pick out your first boat. Because you don't wanna have to work all the time just to pay for the use of the boat.
So the most important piece of advice I can give you guys when you go to buy a boat is to please the wife, you know, in the end.
I can't stress it enough. This is all supposed to be fun. I mean, this is what we live for here on the coast.
Chasin the Sun has been brought to you by Minn Kota. Half Pitch Tackle. Get out there. Fish Monkey Performance Fishing Gloves. Panama City Inshore. These guys can fish. And by Visit Panama City Beach. Real fun beach.
So break out another 1,000. Yeah, they're kind of a pain in the butt at times, but hey, maintenance solves all that. But on their way back from that day of being on the water, sun going down, ripping along at 40 miles an hour, that's true freedom.
Buying or building a new boat is supposed to be fun, so make it fun. The process, to me, is one of the biggest parts of owning a boat because every boat I own is a little different than the last, and every one I'm trying to fine tune and tweak and make it a little better than the last. So when you're laying out a boat, you're designing this boat, enjoy the process. Make sure it's gonna do what you need it to do. Don't worry about the trends or what your friends want on the boat. Be honest with yourself. Pick out what boat, what hull you need, put some research into how you're gonna lay it out, how you're really gonna use that boat, and then put all those accessories on there that you want. Because at the end of the day, if you go through the process correctly, you're gonna end up with the right boat for you, and that's gonna mean that you're gonna have more fun on the water in that new boat.
So the most important piece of advice I can give you guys when you go to buy a boat is to please the wife. You know, in the end, she is the decision maker.
You know, as a kid, I thought my freedom was when I could get on a bicycle and ride down the streets through the neighborhood. And then you get older and you start driving a vehicle and you think, okay, now I get to go a little further. But you're still confined to streets. You know, there's still rules you have to follow. The great thing about the water out here, you can go anywhere you want. And that's why, in my opinion, it is just a more enjoyable freedom on a boat, because we can go as fast as we want here. We can go anywhere we want on this water. So there's just no limit to where or what I can do. I can't stress it enough. This is all supposed to be fun. I mean, this is what we live for here on the coast. Whether it's a brand new boat or a used boat or my first boat or my 100th boat, it doesn't matter. They all do the same thing, and they get me on the water where I can experience that ultimate freedom.